My lead source tonight is the Republican Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio, who sits on the House Armed Services Committee. And thank you for being here. With all the fighting going back and forth with Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon, are you worried that it could derail this?
Well, first off, Kaitlan, no one trusts Iran. And the fact that Hezbollah has attacked Israel, everyone, and surely it's the United States policy that Israel has the right to defend itself. But in this, because we don't trust Iran, there's a grave concern, and they're the greatest sponsor of terrorism, and certainly Hezbollah's supporter. The concern is as to what extent is this mischief from Iran derailing itself, its own settlement agreement, its own peace agreement. But the concern here also has to be for Lebanon. Israel, in attacking, Hezbollah is attacking into Lebanon. They're not attacking Lebanon. And this agreement does call for a ceasefire in Lebanon. And the words that you just read were, of course, despicable concerning Lebanon itself. Lebanon is as much a victim as Hezbollah as the Israelis are. And this is an area that has to be resolved also. Hezbollah deserves to be held accountable, but Lebanon deserves to have sovereignty also.
I mean, if Israel doesn't withdraw their forces from Lebanon, which Netanyahu has said he doesn't plan to do, and you see the fighting continue, is there a line where you would draw that in terms of supporting Israel, sending them shipments? Because the president seems pretty fed up with Netanyahu right now.
Well, I mean, your point of your question is, does the United States have leverage? And we certainly do. And are there, and as we look to, Israel has a right to defend itself. Yes, it does. But also in this, the interest in ensuring that this peace agreement, that this opportunity to resolve some of the disputes in this region must be given a chance is real. And I know this administration is going to rise to that challenge.
You just mentioned Iran being a state sponsor of terrorism. This is something, obviously, that the United States has designated them as. You've talked about this at length before. Are you comfortable with them getting access to money from oil sales or unfrozen assets to continue sponsoring terrorism?
Well, that's, there's a lot that has to happen, and there's a nexus here that even the vice president has said, is not a dotted line. There's a far cry from when the Obama administration put pallets of cash that is untraceable and shipped it to the Ayatollah under the JCPOA, and going through a process whereby there's a negotiation and then a deal where they're once again no longer having their assets frozen and no longer having sanctions, and enter back into the legitimized financial transactions of the world that are traceable and are followed. That is a far cry where, as the vice president was laying out, where the transactions can be traceable and certainly can be controlled and understood.
But the oil
can
sales
affect their ability to support terrorism.
I mean, they can sell oil right now.
Right.
They can sell it to much more attractive currencies than they've been able to, where China is buying it at a discount, basically.
With their economy being significantly diminished and impacted.
Yeah, but if they're selling oil, they're going to make more money, and that's going to boost their economy, is it not?
Which is a goal, because and that's obviously why in this agreement it identifies that there would be this opportunity for a $300 billion economic development fund, because of course it would pull Iran back into the Western community, back into the community that our allies and their neighbors are in, and also give the people of Iran an opportunity for Iran to make a transition, because there has to be a transition here. It can't just be that forever Iran is left with sanctions and is frozen. If there is an opportunity, as the vice president has laid out, for Iran to make a change, we have to take that opportunity.
But right now, I mean, it's the same leadership that's in charge. It's the son of the previous Ayatollah. It's the IRGC still in charge.
Right, but
does that seem like that's changing to you?
They made a declaration in the beginning of this conflict that they would never state that they would walk away from their nuclear ambitions. They just did. So they are already beginning.
Yeah, but they've kind of said that before.
No, but they
by kind of, I mean they did say it in the JCPOA.
They said it with with their having underground nuclear enrichment facilities that we really didn't have the ability to understand exactly what was going on, that are now gone, that this administration in Midnight Hammer took out. And that agreement had a termination provision in it, so they know they would be released from it while they continued to have their underground nuclear enrichment, which have been eliminated in this military conflict, which is why this military conflict was important. This is not the same situation. In Midnight Hammer, they just lost their underground nuclear enrichment.
Then why was the war necessary?
Under the Obama administration, they were permitted to continue all of their clandestine facilities that they had to continue to operate them.
Yeah, I mean, but then some people would say, why did this war happen, for these 5 months? Because if the facilities were destroyed and they weren't a threat of having a nuclear weapon.
Because they had said they would not get rid of their nuclear ambitions, that they were going to continue to enrich, they were going to rebuild all of their facilities, they were going to continue to their quest and their nuclear ambitions. And they were going to continue to be a threat to everyone in the region, and we saw that they were. And then they closed the Strait of Hormuz. This agreement does two things. It ends the military conflict over their nuclear ambition, and two, it resolves the issue of the straits. Now there's going to be continued negotiations on the nuclear material that remains. What's going to happen with respect to the oil programs?
The straits weren't an issue before the war started. I mean, you're saying that was solved, but that was a problem that was created by the war, where Iran used that leverage and still could use it again. But
you can't dismiss. You can't just say, "Oh, it was created by the war." It was created by the fact that Iran was continuing to march itself into becoming a nuclear power in the area.
But the strait was open before the war started. Is my point.
You can't say, "Oh, the strait's open, so we're just going to allow them to have that open straits, and we're going to allow them to march toward a nuclear weapon." There are trade-offs here. If you're going to say what we're going to, as every other administration has, we're not going to allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, that we're going to take that action, the strong action that this administration did. By the way, those military plans have been on the table of every president since Bush, and he's the first one who did.
On the reconstruction fund.
Now, hold on. To say that you're going to do that, and then the straits got closed, you can't divorce them. If he takes that step and they close the straits, this was the action that was important.
No, I'm just simply saying it was open before the war and then it was closed during the war. But can I ask you about the reconstruction fund?
What was before the war is they were marching to a nuclear weapon.
The reconstruction fund, sir. You mentioned that, and that's part of this, at $300 billion. Eric Erickson asked today why they would need a reconstruction fund if only their military targets had been hit during this war. What would that be necessary for? And Senator John Cornyn said that it would be used to rebuild their ballistic missile and military industrial base, their uranium enrichment program, and their support for their terrorist proxies. Do you think he's wrong? That's what they'd use a reconstruction fund for?
He certainly wasn't involved in the negotiations, and he's certainly not going to be involved in the negotiations ongoing. And I certainly take the statements of those who've been involved in the negotiations to be very, very important. And what they have said is that these are going to be financial arrangements for the purposes of looking at economic development that would work to bring Iran into, as their neighbors have, as the Middle East transformation as we have seen, as the Abrams Accord has taken hold and economic development in the region has taken hold, to make a difference for the population of Iran and hopefully make them in that transition that can take them out of being a terrorist state. Now, that's the hope. We hope also that this military action and this agreement and then these steps will ensure that we're not going to be dealing with a nuclear Iran that will have threatened both our allies, Europe, our allies in the region, and the United States.
Do you think Iran should be able to have ballistic missiles?
Well, this agreement, the president has said that there are two things that this is not going to address. It's not going to address both missiles, and it doesn't address their nefarious actions in the area. It really doesn't address their terrorist proxies. Those are two things that former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had identified in the first Trump administration. Those were certainly things that were very important to me and others that we had looked for, that we had looked for in this agreement that are not there.
Should they be?
Certainly, I think that our actions in looking in the development of Iran desperately needs to be in, well, what does that mean? Because what we saw in this last conflict is Iran exhibited capabilities to reach Europe and to reach London, and we certainly don't want
But the president
that
said the other
capability
day
to
that they
have.
should be able to have ballistic missiles.
I-
He said
I
if Saudi
don't-
Arabia has them, they should have them. Do you agree with that?
I think he was talking about being able to deter their neighbors and the people that in the region that are also that they may be in conflict with. I don't believe he was talking about being.
But do you
a threat
agree
to
that
the
they
world.
should have ballistic missiles, period?
It would not be my preference. We'll have to see exactly what what comes out of this agreement. But there is no way that I believe that Iran should continue to be a threat to our allies, to Israel, to the United States, and certainly to
I mean, they were bombing half of the allies in the region when the war started. So we've seen how they'll use them.
There's no question that they remain a threat when they have the capability.
Yeah. Congressman Mike Turner, thank you for joining us
Thank you
tonight.
for
It's
having me,
great to have
Kaitlan.
you here on set.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.